Hello and welcome to another edition. Well, very excited, Jonathan, of the Dynasty Fantasy Football Central podcast. I'm Michael Moore. He's Jonathan Scott. Say hello, Jonathan.
Hello.
Hopefully everything worked correctly. There was actually some music and some semblance of an actual podcast intro to this thing. So it's getting more official by the day. But it's been a while, but I think, Jonathan, now that it's closer to the actual regular season football, these are going to be more regular. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, normalcy is a good thing. It seems like the people have been asking for normalcy, so we'll give them normalcy.
Our one diehard fan, which we will give a shout out later too,
Yeah, absolutely.
has demanded it. So I think for this edition, let's go through. We talked about dynasty running backs. Always a fluid situation. Of the major offensive positions, I think it's fair to say that the top of the list seems to change every year. Is that about right?
Yeah, that'll happen in a fluid league. That's pretty standard.
Well, yeah, and especially running backs. So, like, for example, quarterbacks, I'm pretty sure Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers are going to be the top options in Dynasty for, 5 years probably? I don't see that changing a whole lot.
I would say with the new NFL rules, I'd say 10. But, yeah, we're on the same path.
Even better. So, anyway, but with running backs, I mean, that's really, like you said, it's very fluid, obviously. But at the same time, I think there's some places to get some value and some places you probably need to dump. So we're going to go through that list and just see what happens. And in the spirit of improvisation, which is one of Jonathan's many skills, I'm just going to hit him with stuff, and we're going to see how he reacts. So I don't know. Have you been drinking, Jonathan, or just me?
No, I've got a giant Sonic drink. That's it.
Okay, well, that's fine. Well, if you want to put something in it later, that's fine too.
No, you bring the heat. I'll bring the sober answers. We'll be good. We'll be all right.
That's probably a good combo. That's probably a good combo. So let's get started then, and let's go down the list at the top. So for the last couple months, it's essentially been Le'Veon Bell, Eddie Lacy, and Jamal Charles as your 1, 2, 3. Any argument there?
No, it's pretty subjective. I mean, I'm not an Eddie Lacy fan, but I get it. I'm not going to get really upset in any of those three people in any order. I would add a fourth person to that and add Gurley to that, and people would look at me like I'm crazy maybe. But
well, if you were following along, Gurley is actually number 4. So there.
I'm not following along because I want that improvisation. See what happened here?
Right. No. Yeah, and that was your first. That was your first test. So
yeah.
Congrats.
You're welcome. Yeah, I would actually add him into that tier. I just think the guy is more talented than everyone else on that list. I mean, knee injury aside, it looks like he'll recover. The guy's just insanely talented. So I mean, whatever. We're picking nits at this point, but
right. Okay. After that, I think it gets a little dicey, and I'll just run through the rest of the top 10 quickly. You've got DeMarco Murray at 5, LaShawn McCoy at 6, Jeremy Hill at 7, Matt Forte at 8, Marshawn Lynch at 9, and then Melvin Gordon at 10.
Okay.
So to me, that is more a testament to who has survived and who has stayed healthy as far as running backs go. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Meaning it's not like skill-wise, a lot of those guys are much better than, your 11 through 20 options. But look, they've got a good role and they've been healthy. So there you go.
Well, I think skill-wise, Matt Forte might be better than all those guys, and he does have a role. But he's also, 29, I think? 29 or 30?
No, he's 29. Well, and that's an excellent point, and especially for dynasties. So, for example, you've got DeMarco Murray, 27, LaShawn McCoy, 27, Matt Forte, 29, and Marshawn Lynch, 29. So, yeah, it's dicey, man. And I did an article earlier this offseason essentially saying once you hit 29, I mean, there's just a serious drop-off as far as fantasy production. So, yeah, man, it's dicey through that top 10. And again, it's just another way that running backs are the most fluid out there and just kind of scary, actually. So
yeah, out of that group, I actually think I prefer Jeremy Hill to all of them just to swing for the fences. It seemed like they really leaned on him, at least in the run game anyway, and he's so young. God, he's so young.
And you know what? Last year, I would have disagreed with you. I was not a fan going into the season, and even early in the season, it's not like he blew the doors open. But man, the the last half of the season, man, he just, ripped it. He gained 100 yards in his last 3 games. He had 2 other games at 150 yards. He scored 9 touchdowns last year. The guy's a beast. And look, I think I personally have held on to the Gio Bernard dream as long as anyone could. It's not going to happen. He's not the 3-down back. He's not even the 2-down back. So yeah, I've moved on, and I'm fully engaged with the Jeremy Hill project. So I kudos to you for calling that early on.
Thanks. And besides the actual output, which was good, other than the 1 game he missed against Pittsburgh because he got knocked out injured, the carries were 24, 27, 25, 22, 23, 18. Like
Yeah, I think they like to run it. So
yeah. Oh, wouldn't you? I'm not.
It's amazing. It was very impressive. And yeah, look, it's his 2nd year. Holy crap. He'll be good for a long time, I think.
I think so. I think it's the highest upside there. So.
Well, and just in another quick note, I truly think the team itself is probably realizing Andy Dalton ain't it.
He sucks.
Not to say he's not their quarterback, but they're definitely not going to build the offense around him. That's for sure. And look, I think Hill's a guy they potentially could. So, skipping a little ahead, I think that covered the top 10 pretty good. It's actually a pretty even mixture of veterans and really young guys.
Yeah.
But one guy I wanted to get your opinion about, Adrian Peterson, currently at 13th on our rankings, but easily the oldest running back out of the top 25 at 30 years old. But again, he sat out last year, obviously, or most of last year on suspension.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Even though he's 30, I think I still would buy Peterson in Dynasty.
This is kind of a cop-out, but I need some – it's a unique situation, right? I need context to the situation we're talking about buying or selling. Because I think he'll be good. I think he'll be really good. And I think actually if I'm going to Vegas in about a month, and that, one of the teams I'm looking on putting a future bet on for a division title is the Vikings because they look really good. That being said, I don't know that you have more than a year or 2 guaranteed of him in Minnesota, either because of performance or because of contract issues. And where he goes after that, I know he's transcendent and he's probably going to be good no matter where he goes. I get that. But at 31, going somewhere else in a different offense, different system, because they're not going to keep franchising him after his contract runs out. I think he only has, a year left on it? A year or 2? Correct me.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just get to it. He's 13th now on our Dynasty rankings. Is that would you go high or low on that?
Oh, well, okay. So I think honestly, I think it's about right. The one thing I'll say is at 11 we have C.J. Anderson, and that's god awful. Like how did you allow that to happen?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, well, you're an idiot. So that's good.
He's in the Gary Kubiak offensive running backs.
That's cool. It's a C.J. Anderson filled backfield.
That's fine.
No. That's cool.
And for the record, Adrian Peterson has a contract that runs through 2017. Just FYI. So.
Okay, so.
He did sign a 7-year, $96 million deal in 2011, so he's got a while.
So I don't know, man. I'd probably have him ahead of Anderson, and I'd probably have him ahead of Hyde, honestly. And I'm a huge Hyde fan. You know that.
Interesting. Wow.
There's just too much guarantee with Peterson for the next 3 to 4 years, I think. And although I think he'll get that same production with Hyde, I, even as a Niner fan, have no idea right now in the beginning of July of what to expect out of the Niners offense. I have a semblance of an idea, but I really don't have a clue. Whereas in Minnesota, I know what I'm going to get. And I tend to lean towards the first 2 or 3 rounds of picks to be as safe as possible. And if Peterson's there in the 2nd or 3rd round, beginning of the 2nd, or even if he falls to the 3rd, because people go wide receiver crazy, which they did in the last draft we did. God bless them. I think Peterson was there at the end of the 2nd or beginning of the 3rd for us. I don't see how you pass that up, even if he is only 30.
Yeah, I'm a fan for all the reasons you just said. He's in a good offense. He's got a good quarterback. He's got Norv Turner, who, again, you and I are very high on Norv Turner. I don't know if the masses are aware of his impact.
I think it's been that kind of thing's been run into the ground, I think. Everyone knows Norv Turner is good for running backs, and he's good for efficient quarterbacking.
Well, he's just good as an offensive coordinator. I mean, coach maybe not the best, but offensive coordinator, he's done wonders. So, point is, and look, here's the other thing. Yes, he's 30, but you truly can't look at it as he's 30. I mean, he took the year off last year, essentially.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in real time, if whatever you want to call it, you got to view him as 29, which given is not a whole heck of a lot better. But look, I think it buys you another year. So
I think he's a genetic freak. I think we have enough evidence to show that he's not normal. I think you're going to get 3 to 4 years of high-end production out of him. And I don't mind taking that as a running back one in a dynasty league if this is kind of a guarantee, man. This is like taking Tony Gonzalez in his early 30s. Yeah, he was old. He was also really fucking awesome. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
You just go with it because he was a genetic freak. So, I can't blame anyone that has him as a 10, 11 or so in a dynasty ranking.
So if you were in a startup, let me ask this: since it's 13th and that's right on the cusp of running back 1, running back 2, would you be comfortable with him as your running back 1 in a dynasty startup?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I mean, assuming he's not a top 5 running back taken.
Now here's the thing, right? It's interesting when you say that. If you take him first and he's your running back 1, you are sort of hedging your bet. You're making a commitment to you have to win in the next 2 to 3 years. So sure. You don't take someone like Carlos Hyde, who may not be great next year, but will be a couple years from now, or you don't take another rookie running back like TJ Yeldon as your running back 2, because that's just really defeating the purpose. So,
yeah. I think I agree with that. And look, that's assuming if you've got Peterson, if you addressed other positions before running back, say tight end or quarterback or even receiver.
Yeah.
I think having Peterson there is not a bad idea. So, but yeah. Okay, so I think we're in agreement on that. He's a freak and should be treated accordingly.
Yeah, I also agree that C.J. Anderson blows. So we'll fix that. People on the website will fix that. I promise you. We'll get that changed. Agree
to disagree, but we'll get to that. So the next topic that I wanted to get with you, because I know you love it, the rookie running backs after Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon.
Okay.
And just go with it. But I think we can safely agree Gurley and Gordon are in that tier 1 of rookie running backs. Yeah. Tier 2, I think, is safely T.J. Yeldon, Amir Abdullah, and Tevin Coleman. Would you agree with that? Would you add anyone to that? I don't think so.
I think you went 2 names too far.
Well, okay. Let's just establish, is there anyone to add to that? And obviously you think not. So looking at those 3, in the dynasty rankings, they're all top 25 options. Primarily because, let's face it, they're rookies, and the hope is that you hit a home run with one of them. Let's talk about who of those 3 you like the best. And given, I realize you don't like them as much as other people, but of those 3, because look, those are going to be intriguing options in dynasty leagues, especially if you're in an established league and you've got a rookie draft, they're going to be drafted pretty high. So out of those 3, what do you like and what do you not like? Try to find the positive.
Okay, so I'm going to put on a happy face, and I'm going to pretend.
Please do.
All right, so I can actually make a case for T.J. Yeldon. I liked him a lot as a freshman and sophomore. It looked like he got heavier in his junior year. He put on more weight, and a lot of the jump cut ability he had kind of disappeared. But it looks like they're working him back to where they wanted to be a 3-down back, so the opportunity to fail is going to be there, where I can't guarantee that with the other players on that list. T.J. Yeldon, Amir Abdullah had a really good college career too, but Yeldon also had a very prolific college career. So at least you can say you've seen him do it against top-level competition. And he's built for the job, man. He's not a small dude. He's 6'1", 230. He's a big guy. So at least if you're looking for all the cliche descriptors of a bell cow running back, I guess, for a lack of a better term. And God, I just feel dirty saying that, but Yeldon's your guy, right? So you could talk me into TJ Yeldon as a running back 2 in a dynasty league pretty easily. I think you could look at it and say, well, here's to hoping. Whereas the rest of them are just lottery tickets, man, including Abdullah. All the way from Abdullah down to anybody you have in that list, you're going to have a bunch of assholes in your drafts who took them on a whim, in the middle of the 8th round, and they're going to hit, and that guy's going to be like, see, I told you, I knew it. And that dude's just an asshat. They're all lottery tickets, man. None of these guys
And I agree with that. I think, you're talking about the David Johnsons of the world, the Duke Johnsons, the David Cobbs, stuff like that. I would agree with that.
Duke Johnson I like a lot, too, by the way. The situation is awful. Like, he couldn't have gone to and I don't think it's going to have a long career either. Like, he had a situation to have a good first 3 to 5 years, be used up after his first contract, sign a big second contract, and never be relevant again. Problem is, now he's in Cleveland, where running backs go to die, and he's already back in the depth chart anyway. So,
yeah, that's unfortunate.
But honestly, if you're going to roll the dice on any of these guys, I'd roll the dice on Jay Ajayi and just say, hey, you know what? The ticking time bomb, I will hold the ticking time bomb. But until it goes off, it's going to be great. Because I think he actually is better than Lamar Miller. I think he'll take that job within the middle of the season, probably.
See, now that is a hot take, my friend. That is a hot take.
I mean, I guess. Sizzling fire. I wish I could have emojis in the middle of the YouTube link.
Not today. Not on DeAndre Jordan emoji day. I can't take it anymore.
That hurts too.
But going back to that sort of second tier of those rookies, I agree with everything you said. I think Yeldon probably has the clearest path.
Yep.
I think you can make a case that out of those three, meaning Yeldon, Coleman, and Abdullah, he's probably the best all-around running back. And, yeah, he doesn't have any competition. You've got Tevin Coleman, who, it's so funny to me that 1 year after the Falcons draft Devontae Freeman, and that, obviously crashed and burned, people are buying again into this Atlanta running back situation with Coleman, who, might end up being the better player than Freeman. But it's just funny that it's the same team and it's the same situation again.
Once they learn how to use a running back, I'll believe that I'll draft one, right?
Right, and I think that's a good point. I mean, if you can, and given it is a new era there with Dan Quinn, so it remains to be seen what their scheme is. Well, no, my point is, I agree with you. Under the Mike Smith regime, I don't think there was a plan. I think it was just, hey, just chuck it and let's see what happens.
Well, I think there was a plan. The plan was, Matt Ryan, what are you comfortable with? I'm comfortable throwing it to my awesome wide receivers and Tony Gonzalez.
Right.
And that's it. And once that's built into your DNA, I don't know how you get that out. So.
And again, I think, just as a side note, Mike Smith was probably overmatched as a coach, I'm going to guess, with the challenges and all that stuff.
He wasn't great.
Yeah. So, but then at the same time, Abdullah, I think you and I probably disagree on. I agree with you that he doesn't have the clearest path to starting, but I think in the long run, I think he's better than Joique Bell, which I think a lot of people are. And I think, Theo Riddick is a very specialized player and will have a very niche role there in Detroit. So I think Abdullah also has some pretty good potential. So for me, I mean, I would still take Yeldon over those two, Coleman and Abdullah, but, Abdullah's not far behind. Coleman, I don't really get. Again, I think it's a repeat of the Freeman situation, even though they're different players, but it's the same situation, and I put a lot of emphasis on situation personally.
So with Abdullah, I guess it depends how much you depend on analytics when it comes to measurement of force and things like that. You ever heard of the Spark measurement and what they do at the combine and different scientific studies?
Yep.
He had the highest Spark score of any running back in the combine, so that helps him, I guess. I don't know, man. It's really hard for me to put a lot of faith, despite the Spark score. I'm pro analytics. Despite that Spark score, it's hard for me to put a ton of faith into a 5'9", 190-pound running back who runs a 4.5, 540. You aren't big enough to run over people, and you're not fast enough to run by people. So what would you say you do here? And I don't know. Maybe he really is just a bowling ball of butcher knives like Maurice Jones-Drew, and he just creates enough force that he'll just run through people all day.
Man, he'd have to bulk up. He'd have to bulk up a lot for that.
Oh yeah. Not only that, if that's his best case scenario. Let's say that's his best case scenario. Is using his measured force, which is better than anybody else in the draft. At that size, he has 3 or 4 years in the league, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind drafting him, but he's a sell high if he does it. If he does come good, it's a sell high for me.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. All right, so that covers a good chunk of the top 25, which for most dynasty leagues and most fantasy leagues is enough for your starting running backs. But let's go a little deeper, Jonathan, and get to I don't know what you want to call it, the value picks, the home run picks, whatever you want to call it. Okay,
So before we do that real quick, can I just point out to everyone that's listening that you were incredibly worried about me going improv on this, and this has been one of the smoother podcasts we've had until I cut this off right here.
I know.
So for the record, suck it. I'm awesome.
That's fine. And look, this could be the format going forward. I have a drink, you don't, and then we just see what happens. So, but no, I agree. But okay, so I'm going down the list. Here's someone I want to talk about and get your opinion on. One of our bigger drops from month to month, Mr. Kristen Michael from Seattle. He was 30th last month, dropped to 42nd this month. I'll let you sort of give your opinion, and then I'll give mine, but let's just say it's not good. Well,
I mean, you can attest to this. I was never really big on him in general. Let's do that to start with. Like, I understood what it was coming out of the draft. Like, hey, he kind of looks like Marshawn Lynch. He'll learn from Marshawn Lynch. It'll be great. Okay, like that's fine. He split time at A&M. He wasn't really the lead back in A&M. He constantly had people coming in every year, taking carries away from him. People that lived in Texas knew that he was also kind of a knucklehead off the field. Like, he wasn't destructive or violent by any stretch. He just constantly did dumb shit, which is what you do when you're in college. And so people just assumed he would grow out of that. It sounds like A, he hasn't grown out of that, and B, he hasn't developed at all. And also, let's be honest here, the Seattle Seahawks, I mean, Jerry still, I don't think they draft well. I think they reach big time for offensive players specifically. And they kind of did it again this year too. Skill position players, it seems like they don't know how to draft correctly. They make up for it because they hit on a quarterback in the third round, and they can just draft all the pterodactyls they want to on defense, and everything's kosher. But when it comes to skill position, I would like you to tell me the last time they drafted a skill position player that worked out for them. I don't know.
Sean Alexander?
God, I guess back in the 90s. I mean, I don't know.
They haven't had a receiver in a while. I know that much.
Depending on what you think about Paul Richardson, I guess he could be whatever. I don't know. No. Jerome Carson would be great.
So let's talk about this.
Okay.
I remember specifically the hype train on Michael for rookie drafts. I mean, I think in our draft he went probably early second, which still was pretty good when you consider he wasn't even supposed to start. I mean,
yeah,
that was pretty impressive. So I think the thinking there in dynasty circles was, look, Marshawn Lynch is getting older. Which, look, at the time they drafted Michael, I think he's 29 now, so he was 27 then. So you're probably thinking, hey, Lynch is near the end of the line. He's up for a contract soon. And look, they're a power run offense. So, it would seem to indicate, hey, Lynch isn't going to be there in a year or two. Mm-hmm. But he managed to surprise, I'm pretty sure, everyone, including Seattle, by being as effective, if not more effective, these last couple years. And look, their hands are tied. They can't get rid of Lynch now. I mean, they just re-signed him to another 1-year deal this season. So, I think it's more a function of their offense and their personnel. Meaning, look, they don't like to spread the ball around, right? I mean, Lynch is the bell cow. That's why he's one of the few values at running back as far as the top end goes. So, and Michael, look, on a per carry basis, Michael's been very good. I mean, he averaged 4.4 yards a carry his rookie year and 5 yards a carry last year. It's just combined, he's had about 50 carries in the NFL. So, if anything, I think this could be a great time to buy low on him. I don't know that he'll be any lower. I mean, look, Lynch has to peter out at some point, I would think. And once that happens, I can't imagine them turning the offense over to Robert Turbin necessarily. So
no, I would hasten anyone to assume that the solution to who's going to replace Marshawn Lynch is actually on the roster.
And that's that's a good point too. But I think now is a great time to get Kristen Michael. He's a free agent after next season, so he still has a couple years left there in Seattle. But
If you are going to do something like this, do it before training camp starts. That's my only
Right,
thing.
because he is a training camp beast. That's
And
how
he's
his
a
hype got
preseason
built
beast.
up.
Like he's gonna do well against second team units in preseason. He's going to get some first team carries, and people are going to toss themselves into him still being really good. Then the coaching staff is going to sour on him again, and he's probably going to get cut next year. But if you want to do something like this, I would advise everyone to do it now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
He reminds me sort of, man, I can't think of it now, but who was the receiver the Niners had a while ago that was an alcoholic but looked awesome in every single practice we had years ago? He was on numerous teams. Oh, Corn Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
Also a Seattle. He was drafted by Seattle. He might have been good. But every year, man, it seemed like in preseason, first couple of games, he's going to be great. He's going to be great. And it's just like every year it started to unravel. Every coaching staff had the same complaint. We found out later he was dealing with alcohol issues and he had demons to fight. And so, this is what it is. But, if you're going to put your faith into physical freaks like this, which it's okay to do because, again, they are lottery tickets, but you just have to do it before the hype train starts to ramp up. And the hype train always ramps up right when training camp starts.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, yeah, I think the lesson there is get Michael now if you can.
Yep.
All right. So going down the list a little more, it's a lot of stuff that's fairly obvious, I think. You've got a pretty good mix of rookies that, like you said, are home run picks. If they'll be drafted in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds of rookie drafts. Ajayi, Allen out of Baltimore, which, that could be interesting. You've got Forsett, who's 30, who they re-signed him, but it's not like it was earth-shattering money.
No.
And they still got Taliaferro, who, again, didn't exactly set the world on fire last year. So
yeah, I'm good there.
I think that's, I would be okay with Allen, I think, in rookie drafts, 3rd or 4th round. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
You've got Matt Jones out of Washington, who, I think you're going to hear more about him as the Alfred Morris heir apparent, which could just build his value up even more, which kind of scares me. I
don't know. As an Alfred Morris owner, I don't know that I would buy anybody in the Washington offense right now.
Right.
Alfred Morris doesn't look done by any stretch, but it's so much dysfunction and there's so much confusion.
And the funny part is, unlike Cleveland, they have talented players at those positions. They just can't seem to make it work.
No, it's just so odd. And you would think if you want to run, just run to the left every time where Trent Williams is, and they just can't.
Right.
You just can't figure it out, man.
Well, I would think it's like, look, it worked so well a couple years ago, just handing it to Alfred Morris. Why don't you just go back to that and just do that?
And we're being very flippant and simplistic when it comes to offensive football, but man,
that's how I roll, man.
Yeah. It just seems like it's built to have one of those Frank Gore 2005 seasons where, hey, your rookie quarterback is a kind of an asset. He can't really throw the ball. Cool. Here's 495,000 carries. Get at it.
Yeah, and they lost their trademark case, so it's just a bad week in Washington.
Good. Fuck them.
Anyway, as you get into the 50s and the 60s of our running back rankings, it's a lot of players, quite honestly, that actually, here's what I'll say about that. It's a lot of guys that probably had a lot of promise because they were young and rookies, but now as sort of the years tick on, people are realizing, hey, you're just not good. So, for example, you've got Denard Robinson as 57, who, the TJ Yeldon thing, I think pretty much took care of that.
Sure.
You've got Trent Richardson, which finally,
don't draft him.
Jesus.
Nobody draft him.
That's my point. Even last year, when Dynasty rankings still had him up there in the 20s for some reason,
look,
I just never got it because he was
a free cigarette can still give you cancer. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I've never heard that. That's interesting. Okay. You've got Kadeem Carey for Chicago, who, look, he had 1 year where he had a shot to back up Forte, didn't take advantage, so now they drafted another one. So
and they haven't said a single good thing about him. They won't say
in the few years he's been there, they haven't said a good thing about him. So
2 coaching staffs, they're both kind of like, yeah, he's a guy, he's there. Next question.
It's not good. Okay, so I have a couple of scenarios for you that I want to get your opinion on real quick.
Okay.
let's talk about Zach Stacy and just the Jets running game as a whole. You've got Chris Ivory as the starter, who I don't think anyone would argue with that. And even in the Dynasty rankings, he's ranked 43rd, but that's a pretty good value, I think. And I know you've had Ivory before, but I think that's a pretty good value for that, right?
I think so here's the thing that makes Chris Ivory valuable in Dynasty leagues is that he is available for workload and he never gets hurt. It's one of those like old coaching idioms, man, that guy always falls forward. Well, yeah, and that's great. And it takes him 32 carries to get 110 yards. And he had a coach who loved to play that way last year. So, again, pardon my ignorance. I don't really know what they're going to do in New York with the offense this year. It sounds like they're going to more of a spread attack. They said, all right, Geno, we know what you're good at. We're going to give you a chance to do exactly what it is you're good at. And if you can succeed in it, we'll move on with you. If you can't, we're moving on. So I don't know how much that negates what he does. By he, I mean Chris Ivory, what he does in that offense, because he's not a spread offense running back. I don't know, man. Like, am I reading too much into that, or am I just like he's good, he's fine? I would not have him as a starter. He can't be a starter for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's kind of funny. He's the guy to me that you always think like, oh, he's dead, but he always comes back. Like he doesn't go away ever. Yeah. And even in New York, they signed Stephen Ridley, which he's a fairly polarizing figure in itself. They traded for Zach Stacy, who I brought up before. Yeah. But even the funny part is, even despite those two moves, you still got Chris Ivory at the top of the depth chart there. That's the funny thing,
yep.
Yeah. Which, you could argue, hey, it was good value for the Jets to get those guys. But at the end of the day, they apparently aren't good enough to overtake Chris Ivory. So I don't know, man.
They may not. I mean, Chris Ivory's still only 27. He's a big dude, man. 6 foot, 225. And Ridley. I mean, good God.
Another I think positive for Ivory. See if you can believe this. He hasn't surpassed 200 carries in a season since he entered the league at all.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tread left on those tires, I think.
There is. I mean, he only played 6 games a season in New Orleans in 11 and 12.
Let's put it this way. I'll say this. If he were my number 3 running back, Dynasty or otherwise, I think I would be thrilled.
I'd be okay with it. Sure. Yeah. I'd be happy with it. He's my number 3 in one of my leagues, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's totally okay with me.
I would be thrilled. I mean, you've got a guy that's a definite starter. Yeah. And, again, we've talked about this before. I'm probably a little higher on the Jets offense as a whole than most people. But yeah, I think it could be pretty decent, So
I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic about the Jets. I'm not going to say high.
Yeah, I don't think.
I'm not a big Amaro fan, just in general.
I'm not either. I don't think Jason Morrow is good at all.
But I do like. See, what's funny is you fell into your trap of the white tight end initially.
I did. And for the record, just so the viewers at home know, I love me some white tight ends.
We're developing an app for Michael to have a Tinder for white tight ends where he can just swipe all day.
But I would only swipe right.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
So
if you saw me on the camera, it was.
But Jason Morrow, I mean, he's not 100%. So I feel like it's not like a Jason Witten who he's definitely 100% white. Or even. Look, the whole genesis of this theory was Zach Sudfeld from a couple years ago. Man,
I'm telling you, man,
I was pretty close to getting that jersey too. That's how close that was.
Any incredibly athletic white tight end, you're just like, yeah, that's the future.
Love it. You know who I drafted today in a fantasy draft was Zach Ertz, and I love it.
I mean, it's just
love it. Anyway, okay, so moving on. A couple other guys that we can talk about. Covered Stacy. A very interesting case, and I don't know what to make of it, quite honestly. But Bryce Brown in Buffalo, go.
No.
In Dynasty, even as a whole.
No.
Okay.
No.
Really?
Look, man, they think so little of him as a player. They re-signed a 34-year-old running back to play backup. They were like, hey, we got this crazy talented dude who was a number 1 recruit in the nation coming out of high school. And we're still like, no, Fred Jackson, come back. Oh, you're 34-year-old off a knee injury? No, it's cool. We got it. We'll take care of that. Like,
Yeah,
it's all. I mean, and listen again, for people who don't know, I'm a Tennessee fan. Like, he started his career. We thought we were set with the #1 running back in the nation, #1 recruit. Lane Kiffin came through. Bryce Brown was going to be here, and it's like he's talented. Yeah, he's going to do stuff. He's the J.R. Smith of running backs. There, I said it. He is the J.R. Smith of running backs. Right
place at the right time.
Yep. So if you want that, man, awesome. Highlight reels, great. Buffalo Bills fans will treat him like he'll be a demigod just because of the weird shit he does. But he's not worth it. He's not draftable. He's not any good.
So not even like a 4th-round rookie pick.
No, man. Like, what do you expect out of him?
No, I'm just kidding.
Like, that's the thing. Like, what do you expect to get out of him?
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing.
All right. Well, look, we made it to the end of the list. Before we get to the viewer requests, anything else on running backs? Any trends or just something we maybe didn't cover tonight? What you have the final word on running backs for tonight?
My only thing I would say, and I've made a reference to it with the Niners and now the Jets, is that if you have a new coaching staff in there with new personnel at running back, don't put too much emphasis on the results of a training camp or of a preseason, but sort of get an idea of what kind of offense they're running, what they're going to lean towards this season. You can hear about it and get whispers about it, especially if they're already on your roster. Like, I already have Carlos Hyde and Chris Ivory on my roster. I'm very intrigued on how they plan on using them, how they're going to be utilized in that offense, and if they start to fit. And if they don't start to fit, it's not irrational to me or irrational to be an adult, and use the right word there, to start thinking about a plan of moving on from them if you just see it's not going to work. Because I've fallen trapped to that in the past quite often, actually, where I fall in love with the flashy thing that's going to revitalize this offense. We're going to utilize them in new ways. And then you realize that the offense, they just don't know how to do that. Like, Tavon Austin's a great example of that. I would say, Dexter McCluster is another great example. People loved Dree Archer for the Steelers a couple of years ago. Another example of that. You have to be talented enough to take touches away from other professionals, and then the people that say you are talented enough have to understand how to use you correctly. Right. There's a lot going on there. So,
well, and just to sort of piggyback on that point, running backs, man, there's just no bell cows left. There's just not. I mean, look, I'm looking at our list right now, and as far as quote traditional running backs, I mean, as far as running back ones go, look, there's maybe 15 tops.
I wouldn't even say there's that many. It just depends on. So I mean, like, here's the thing, man. I would consider Carlos Hyde as a part of that, but he could lose his job in 5 weeks. I think.
Well, okay. So let me ask you. Let's wrap it up with Carlos Hyde, because I'm losing a lot of faith in him, and it's not so much him as just the situation he's in right now, right?
Sure.
Meaning, they brought in Reggie Bush, which, look, that's fine, whatever. He can be the 3rd down guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. And they lost, obviously, Ayupati to Arizona. They lost Anthony Davis to a conscience.
Ayupati was awful, and so was Davis. Davis was ranked the 30th.
Whoa. Ayupati was not awful.
Ayupati last year was bad.
Not in run?
Yes, he was. He was below average, according to Pro Football.
Pass protection, he was bad. I'll look it up. Don't worry. But run protection, he was fine. Okay.
I don't believe so, but look it up. Go.
I am. But my point is, you and I are both 49er fans, as the viewers know, but it scares me, man. Like, I really, really want them to do well, and I want Hyde to do well. And look, there's no reason for him not to, but I don't know, man. It's just not a guarantee, going into this year.
No, but I think that's the issue with once running back positions start to become more fungible, which they are, then you're going to have
fungible. I like that.
You like that?
By the way, Mike Ayupati was the 2nd-ranked guard for run passing there, run blocking next.
So there you go. Okay.
Now, for pass blocking, he was god awful. I would give you that.
So that's fair then.
And that's according to Pro Football Focus, by the way, who I moved with. So
that's so once they become more fungible, you're going to have these musical chairs of consistency, right? So if you're someone that craves consistency out of a running back position and being able to depend on that week on, week out, good luck. Like it's not going to exist because it doesn't need to. Like teams are going to be simplifying the run game and creating larger holes because of a spread run game. And it's going to be easier to find running backs that can get you 5 yards out of these giant holes with these wide splits in the offensive line. And also it doesn't make sense to. It's just the most economically, fungible position in the NFL, man. Like, why spend a ton of money on it? So if you don't spend a ton of money on it, draft 2 guys. Like we drafted 2 guys. We took Marcus Lattimore, Carlos Hyde, and Mike Davis in 3 straight drafts.
Yeah.
So far, none of them have worked out, but we don't care because it's just how it's going to, like, no, it doesn't matter.
Well, hey, hopefully 1 out of the 3 does. So that's okay.
And if they don't, guess what? We'll draft someone next year. Like, who cares? Because they're just running backs. And it sucks for running backs. And, you do have transcendent talents like Adrian Peterson. And I think it took 10 years to get another one in Todd Gurley, and here he is. And it may take another 10 years after that. So, if stability is what you crave, I would not draft running backs first or second. I would go make yourself happy and go get a quarterback and go get a receiver.
Right. No, I agree with all that. Running backs, it's a year-to-year proposition. It just really is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, unless you've got a Le'Veon Bell or Eddie Lacy, which are rare, any one of those guys after that could drop off the face of the earth, and you'd have to get another one. And that's just how it goes. So.
Yep.
Okay, so that I think covered running backs in detail. Now we will go to a viewer question. This is from Chris Gregg, at Chris_Gregg with 2 G's, by the way, 05.
Mm-hmm.
So his question is this, Jonathan. Are you ready?
Yes, born ready.
Okay. So on a rebuilding team, what is the lowest pick you would take for Julian Edelman? All future first offers have been turned down. Do I hold, or what do you do? So the question essentially is Julian Edelman. What do you take for Julian Edelman?
I don't think if you are a rebuilding team, I will say I hope no one else in your league listens to this because I'm about to kill your leverage right here. It's
a hot take.
If you have Julian Edelman on your team and you are rebuilding, I don't think that Julian Edelman holds any value to you whatsoever. Okay, that's not to say that he doesn't hold values to other teams. Because he is the definition of the guy that you love. He is really good as the guy you need as a playoff push, but not the guy you need for 16 games kind of thing. I know that sounds really dumb. Because you can find people that have his stats across the NFL, and they're everywhere. But we did a study like 3 or 4 years ago on standard deviation when it came to wide receivers and how someone like Chad Johnson, if you remember this, had the highest standard deviation of any receiver in the league. Mm-hmm. He literally would win you 1 game and then lose you 2, and then win you 1 game and then lose you 2. Because when it was him and Palmer and T.J. Houshmandzadeh, he would have 2 games where he just had 2 targets and that was it, and then go off for like 14 for 230 and 3 touchdowns. People that are looking to advance further, either to lock down a playoff spot or get further in the playoffs, are looking for stability, and they want their stars to win them the title. At least this is my experience anyway. So you may have more value for Edelman at a trade deadline during the season than you will before the season. Because even last year, as a number 1 receiver, air quotes that no one can see, 92 catches, 972 yards, 4 touchdowns. Awesome. Like he's just not. He's not a guy, man. But he's someone that plays high. He plays lower than his profile. His profile will always be high because of the team he's on, the quarterback that throws him the football. How gritty and gutty and et cetera he is. Insert coded language here. So this is a really long way of me saying if you can get a second rounder for him before the season starts, do it. If you can't, I would hold out, and I think you'll get that by your trade deadline.
Interesting. Well, I can speak as an Edelman owner for a couple years now. And I don't know, man. I mean, I think he's one of the few guys that truly it makes a difference, I think, if it's PPR or not, right? So, for example, the last 2 years, he's averaged 100 catches a year. Now, he's also averaged about, right at 100 or 1,000 yards a year. But the touchdowns, he's only had an average of 5 per year. So, if it's PPR, I think I would – if someone offered me a 1 for him, I think I would do it.
In a heartbeat. Come on.
Anything less than that, I don't know that I would, man, even for a second. You got to remember, second rounds of rookie drafts in established leagues are, I mean, the talent drops off significantly there. And look, Edelman is still valuable. He just re-signed last year. He's 29, but look, he hasn't played a whole lot before the last couple of years. So again, I think it's another guy with a lot of tread on the tires. So, I think, for you and I, we can safely say if you're offered a 1 for Edelman, you should do it. And if there's anyone listening to this podcast in our leagues, which I do have Edelman, if you want to offer a 1 for Edelman, please do. I will gladly accept that. But anything beyond that, for me, I would keep him. I really would. I mean, look, there's no indication he's going to have a reduced role in New England this upcoming year.
I understand that, but I think in this question specifically, he's talking about a complete rebuild, it sounds like. If you're talking about a complete rebuild, a second-round pick has value because a second-round pick in a complete rebuild will probably be a starter next year. I don't like my second-round pick last year was Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry came pretty damn close to Julian Edelman numbers this year as a rookie.
Well, he didn't, but he will. I think the point is made. So, and you're right. I think with it being a rebuilding situation, yes, I think I would be a lot more amenable to a second-round pick partying with Edelman. Because look, he's not a young guy. He's 29, and look, he's on a team that honestly, unless your name's Tom Brady, you could be as easily replaced as the next guy. And that goes for any position. So. A rebuilding team, I think if you get a second, we're in agreement on that. If you can get a second for Edelman, I think you do that. I'm good.
Yeah, because I mean, especially if you plan on using that second for a receiver. So I mean, for
anything. Look, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting this year. This is sort of going off on a tangent, but I think if you're in a one quarterback dynasty league, guys like Winston and Mariota are going to last till the second round. Now they wouldn't in a 2 quarterback league like you and I are in. But for 1 quarterback leagues, quarterbacks, unless you're Andrew Luck, are just not a high priority in rookie dynasty drafts. So that's possible to get a guy like that in the second round, or like you said, some guy that's not starting this year but will probably start next year. So that's the official dynasty fantasy football central position. I think if you can get a second for Edelman, assuming it's a rebuilding situation, I think you do it.
Yeah, assuming it's a complete rebuild.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yep.
So. All right. Well, we went longer than I thought we would, so that's good. All right. So any parting thoughts, Jonathan? Jason Pierre-Paul's finger or, anything else?
No, Pierre-Paul's finger apparently isn't going to be that big of a deal. Apparently it's an index finger, which is the least important finger towards strength when it comes to that hand.
He Ronnie Lotted it. That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, whatever. And don't kill the guy for making a mistake. Like, he's 26. He did something dumb. Let's call it a day. Also, I'm a multi-sport fan. DeAndre Jordan currently is locked in his own house with Clippers. Everyone that went to visit him, including Doc Rivers, they won't open the door, and Cuban, Parsons, and Dirk are outside waiting for them, and they can't get in. They won't leave until midnight, at which they can sign the contract, and everyone can go home. He's literally a hostage in his own house.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to log off and read about that because that is highly intriguing now. But
hilarious.
So anyway, no, that was a good one. We will be, I think, definitely back next week. Like I said, I think we can pick this up again on a more regular basis, and it'll be good.
Especially through training camp and preseason and stuff like that. To let people behind the curtain, my busy season for my actual job doesn't happen until like September. So up until the point where the games actually start. Which at that point it's just going to be a lot of start and sit conversations, trade conversations, etc. Not a lot of review, to be honest. So.
Yeah, but for Dynasty, I think as we've learned, the off season is honestly the best time.
Correct. Yeah. So we may not get the regular season out as regular, but I think from now up until the point the games start, I'd say at least once a week, twice if you guys demand it. Shouldn't be too difficult for us.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. So for Jonathan Scott, I'm Michael Moore. We will see you next week.
Love you guys.